Hey, what's up? And welcome to hotteablog, where the tea is always hot. I'm Sha-Kurah Valiant with another YouTube installment. So let's just get right on to it. This topic for this particular video is going to be a little bit abstract, as it may not appear to be relevant to Black women specifically. And to some or even most of you, it very well might be. It might not be at all relevant to you as a Black woman or a Black woman with strong ties to your own family. And if not, that's fine. You can still tune in, you can still listen. Maybe you have a friend who has experience with this. So what the hell am I talking about? Well, this is what I'm getting at. I want to talk to y'all about narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic parenting. Specifically in this video, narcissistic parenting. For starters, let's get the technical stuff out of the way by laying out the textbook definition of what a narcissist is. Alrighty, so if you haven't fallen asleep on me yet, and what I said sounds familiar to you, please stick around. It's important that you do. The reason why I am introducing this to my blog and my channel is because I've noticed a very disturbing trend in the Black community, specifically in the Black family unit. Having been raised by a narcissistic mother, and in all technicality being raised around her narcissistic husband, I had to undergo some therapy to alleviate the depression and anxiety that manifested from this traumatic experience. Admittedly, my experiences with narcissistic parents destroyed much of my confidence, and it took a few years to even get to the point where I'm at right now. And there's still a lot of work to be done. When I first started my journey to healing and becoming the person I was meant to be, I started becoming more vocal about my experiences with my narcissistic mother. I started reading on the situation. I started subscribing to YouTube channels on narcissistic abuse. I started talking to people about it, even though I had a very strong habit of just dealing with issues on my own. But when I started being more vocal, I started to notice a pattern. Many Black women and girls confess to having near identical experiences with their parents, mothers especially. Now, there's the other issue of talking with other Black women who had these near identical experiences with ex-boyfriends or current boyfriends or husbands and so on. But that's a video for another day. But this will be under the narcissistic series. I was both saddened and shocked by this revelation. The saddest among the confessions that I've heard personally was speaking with a Black woman who was in her 70s. She had emotional challenges and issues that many scapegoats, and we will define what a scapegoat is, end up developing after being raised by a narcissist. It wasn't until I shared my experiences with her that she realized after 70 years what her mother was and understood the abuse she endured. For anyone who's familiar with this insidious form of emotional abuse, I'm sure you are familiar with the feeling of having a huge part of you literally taken or destroyed. So to imagine that this woman who's in her 70s, she could have possibly have been more confident, more comfortable with who and what she is, and having a narcissistic mother, take that from her. And it took her 70 years to realize that. It bothered me deeply. And it really did disturb me that it took her that long, and it took her to have talk to someone else who forced themselves to open up about it in a culture that does not really take mental health seriously. Which brings me to my next question. What makes this relevant to you, Black women? Why have a separate space? Why not just rely on the other places you can go that deals with narcissistic abuse and narcissistic parents? And why here? Why just have a separate space for just Black women? Well, I'll answer that question to the best of my ability. Ladies, we deserve our own separate spaces, a place where we can relate to each other and share common ground. Yes, there are plenty of resources for victims of narcissistic abuse. However, speaking from experience, there are factors that are not discussed that I feel we as Black women should hear or should speak of amongst ourselves. I understand the importance of Black women representing Black women. We're already conditioned to never follow suit with the ways of cultures outside of our own. This can and often does include challenging the Black family unit. However, when the more of us who speak out, the more our toxic perceptions will be shifted. So we can be free to heal and gain agency over ourselves and our own emotional health. There's also the issue of there being a lot of internalized racism that's woven in with a lot of the narcissistic abuse. I have noticed that a lot of narcissistic parents choose scapegoats that resembles Blackness in its purest form. And by that, let's be blunt, a lot of it is dealt with colorism. They pick out children that don't look mixed or racially ambiguous. They pick out children who they think are less than perfect. And a lot of the times, it is young Black girls who are darker skinned and have very strong Black features and so on. Now, for my lighter skinned Black women, I am not going to leave you out. I'm sure you might have had a narcissistic mother who had her own internalized racist issues, and she might have been a darker skinned Black woman, and out of her own jealousy, she picked you out. Not at all insinuating that lighter skin is better. That would be ridiculous coming from myself as a darker skinned Black woman. I do not elevate anyone over me, but it is the fact that the narcissistic mother has an issue with her daughters because she sees her youth withering away in that daughter, to put it very mildly. So if you have a darker skinned mother who possibly holds her own internalized racist issues, which is her burden to bear, not yours as the daughter, she might have picked you out for that. Or she might have had picked out a darker skinned sister of yours because she sees herself and how she feels about herself. She might see that she's not attractive, and then she sees this darker child and that resembles her, and she's taking it out. This whole thing, there's so many ways that it can go. And there are specific details that are specific to Black women in the Black community. And I want to create a separate space for us to heal, because I have tried to involve myself in predominantly white narcissistic abuse circles. And I've been gaslighted. I mentioned how my mother specifically picked me out, not just because I was the stepchild or the child who was a mistake, which makes me a reflection of her own mistakes and her failures, but I was the non-racially ambiguous child. I wasn't the pretty light-skinned girl, so I was less than perfect to her, which made her, much of her abuse tactics relied heavily on picking at my skin tone, picking at my features. There also the fact that she was easily able to push her smear campaigns because of the internalized racism in the Black community. She's dark-skinned, so she has to have a nasty attitude. We can't believe anything that she says because she's, the darker-skinned child. She's the bad one. And people believe that because of their own internalized racist issues. So when I discussed that one time in a space that was just specifically white, I was gaslighted. They said it couldn't possibly be a racial thing. She just probably just wanted to find any fault with you. And that's when I realized that we needed separate spaces as Black women, because we've already been gaslighted enough by the narcissists in our lives. We really don't need the gaslighting that can occur in predominantly white spaces by people who think they know more or better than you, when you yourself have lived this in the Black community. No one should tell you what is and what isn't when they have not lived it. You've lived it. I've lived it. We both know it's true. So with that being said, the Narcissistic Parenting series is going to be a mini series on my channel. The overall structure of my channel, I'm going to have different series for different situations. So there will be narcissistic parents, there will be narcissistic relationships, there will be series on colorism, there will be series on misogynoir. But this one in particular is very personal to me. Even if I have experienced misogynoir and colorism, and that is, very personal to me as well, this one really hits home because of the damage that it causes, and the fact that it flies under the radar. And we as a Black community, we actually normalize this form of parenting, if you ever pay attention. And I'm going to be pointing that out. In these videos. So I will share my experiences with my narcissistic parents. I will also share the experiences of friends who also have issues with narcissistic parents. I'm not going to use their names. I want to respect their privacy. I've noticed that the more we talk about these stories and we bring them to light, the more validated we feel. And validation is powerful. And I want to make sure that we all feel validated here. So with that said, and all that heavy shit out the way, if anything you see here or heard here or on my blog vibes with you, won't you so kindly subscribe to my channel and my blog. I have open forums on narcissistic abuse for all to speak freely and heal together. I hope to see you guys there. Thanks.